Hello, our dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of our program Africa Today. In today's edition, we are going to shed light about the significance of the green economy on the world economy. And to shed the light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Said Khouly, Professor of Economics at Shams University. Dr. Said, good afternoon to you. Before being joined by Dr. Sayed, the sustainable finance is actually growing rapidly in the Middle East region, with more countries actually entering in the green bond market in recent years, tackling the climate crisis in top of everyone's agenda. And of course, the green economy is one of the main concerns that was tackled also in the COP27, which was held in Egypt. We are now joined by Dr. Said Khouly, Professor of Economics at Shams University. Dr. Said, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Sir, Mahmoud Mohieddin, the UN Special Envoy on Financing in the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and high-level chairman of Egypt on the climate change, stated that in order to achieve a green transition, the global financial system must be reformed and the IFI and MDB regulation must be actually changed. What's your take on that, Dr. Khouly?
First of all, we have last year COP27 in Egypt, which is the environmental change, which we see it in the whole world. As you can see, last week in Hawaii, for example, 2 villages burned down. So the climate change and the global environment and the heat, which is going, the drying of rivers and so on, it really affects the whole world, not only in Egypt. Thank God in Egypt we don't have this kind of disaster. So in order to really reduce the waste and so on, Egypt started with their strategy, which it moved to the green environment and the green industry and the green agriculture. We use instead of fossil energy, we start to use wind energy, solar system, and green hydrogen. We started here in Egypt, and that is to replace the conventional system of energy.
Yes.
And in Egypt, we built a lot of projects, and we started already, and we start to see the fruit of this kind of strategy, which is green power supply, green environment, green industrial sector. And we have, for example, in Alamein, which we can see it is a smart city, which we use artificial intelligence and technology in order to improve the environment and reduce waste and reduce the all different kind which it comes with the environment right now.
Yes. Actually, sir, Egypt broke new ground actually for the Middle East and also North Africa when it became the first sovereign in the region to issue a green bond. How do you assess the growth potential of the green bond market in the Middle East region and more specifically in Egypt and North Africa?
For example, in the African continent, I consider as still up to this point of time, it's a virgin continent, which is simply we have a lot of resources and there is misuse of these resources. I believe the future it will come how to manage your resources in terms of mineral resources, which we have a lot of mineral resources in Africa. And with the presidency, when he was the president of African Union a year ago, which we developed a lot of protocol with a lot of African nations in order to best use our natural resources. Our natural resources in terms of power, like energy, and in terms of minerals, which in Africa they are rich with a lot of minerals, and it has been used by foreign country like European country and so on. We start to depend on ourselves. I believe the future we should focus in how to manage our natural resources, how to manage our resources in order to get the best use of our resources in an efficient and effective way.
Indeed, sir. Actually, in addition to the green bond market, what other developments in sustainable finance are developing in Egypt?
For example, we talked about a lot. We should really develop an investment map for all African nations. We should really focus on our competitive advantage in terms of location, in terms of the Suez Canal, in terms of our raw material, and we should build industry based on our natural resources.
Yes.
Instead of exporting raw material, we should export a finished product, and all of this it will come from developing. Egypt can be able to develop a joint venture or sharing technology with other industrial nations and build our base here in Egypt. I believe Egypt in the future, with the excess of power supply, with the human resources we have, which is the lowest cost in the region, we should really be able to be the hub of industrial sector in Africa in the near future.
Yes.
We started already.
Yes, hope so. How can the green growth help Africa to counter the climate change effects, sir?
Excuse me again, please, your question.
How can the green growth help Africa to counter the consequences and the effects of the climate change?
Of course, we reduce all of waste, and it will enable us to really be able to match the green standard worldwide. For example, there is an international standard. We should really cope with this international standard. We should apply it in all different sectors, whether it's agriculture, whether it's industry, whether it's service, whether it's all different kind of service. We should really apply, for example, ISO 14000, which is really integrate the industrial measurement with environmental measurement. Once we are really achieving this kind of international certificate, which is called ISO 14000, we'll be able to increase our export to the rest of the world.
Actually, sir, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said that the private sector should be actually encouraged to finance environmentally friendly schemes in Africa. How can government and business leaders work together to accelerate the transition to low carbon economy?
First of all, the government itself, it's not good enough by the government itself. So we should work hand in hand with our private sector, with private sector, whether it's internal inside Egypt or private enterprise worldwide. So, remember, in order to grow your economy, in order to be able to compete, we should really put hand in hand between the government and the internal private sector. We see it in the recent years, in the last few years, which we integrate a lot private investor, Egyptian private investor, and working with the government in order to be able to increase our development stage and our growth rate. Also, we should really make what we call it as a joint venture or a strategic alliance between Egyptian institution, and whether it's public or private, and the international institution, international manufacturing, and so on. And that it will lead to be able to reduce our employment rate, reduce the inflation rate, and it will be able to increase the level standard for most of the Egyptian people in the near future.
Yes, sir. From your point of view, sir, what measures can attract the private sector for such projects?
First of all, we need to have a structure for law and process to ease up the process for start-up business in order to reduce taxes for the newcomer and the start-up business, and we should really provide them with all different facilities in order to start their business in terms of energy, in terms of infrastructure, which we see in the last few years. We have infrastructure in a very highest level in terms of road infrastructure, bridges, tunnels, and so on. We saw a lot of investment in energy in Egypt. Now we have a surplus for energy, and we satisfy local market, and we export the excess capacity of our power supply. And what we need now is simply the new ways to attract internal private business, internal investment, and external investment. And all it comes is the speed. Time is very important issue for business, for private or international business. So how to speed the process of starting your business is a very essential. And that is the problem. It is not, we have all different factors, but the managerial or management aspect by reducing the time and reducing the process is very essential to be able to compete today.
Yes. Dr. Khouly, from your point of view, what are some of the challenges that the business leaders are facing in transitioning to more sustainable business model, and how can these challenges be overcome?
First of all, when we talk about challenge, there is a local challenge and a global challenge. We are not in the market by ourselves. We have a very high tech, for example, in China, for example, we have a low cost, high quality. And in order to be able to export your product, you should really depend heavily in one of major things. What is your competitive advantage? And what I recommend for all governments in Egypt, for each government to build an investment a strategy or investment map, what each government famous for, and we start to focus in that competitive advantage for each government in Egypt. So we have to have an investment map, what is the most important advantage you have, and we start to invest in it. And of course, this will help to reduce the unemployment rate in each government in Egypt. And we cannot do everything by ourselves, but we can really develop a strategy for strategic alliance and joint venture. And we start already, for example, Russian, for example, they have an industrial zone in Suez Canal and so on, and many other for green energy with Belgium, and for French, they started already investing heavily in Egypt. I believe in the near future we are going to see the fruit of this joint venture between public sector, private sector, and international organization.
Indeed. So what opportunities exist for businesses actually to invest in the renewable energy, the sustainable infrastructure, and other climate solutions, and how can these investments be scaled up to achieve the actually meaningful impact?
For example, it is called social responsibility. For most of industrial, for the pollution, for example, and the result of COP27, the pollution, African content, it really pollutes the environment by less than 1%, where the rest of the European nation and Asian nation and the states, it goes for the rest. So really we suffer from global warming, and when we invest in this, it's social responsibility for highly developed countries like the States, like China, and most of the European countries, is to really invest in reducing the global warming to be less than 1%. That is very important. And we see in Greece, for example, a couple of weeks ago, with the fire and so on, all of that is really, it affects the global environment. So the whole world should, according to COP7 recommendation, we should invest heavily in reducing the global warming. Otherwise, the whole earth will be able to, will suffer from this kind of global warming.
Yes. Finally, Dr. Khouly, what projects, in your opinion, need to be prioritized for the financing of the African Development Bank?
Investing in technology is very important. Remember, most of our industry depend on technology, and we export the technology. So research and development, we should invest on it heavily for all African nations in order to be able to build our system in the future. We cannot really develop unless you have a research and investing in research and development, invest in creativity and innovation in order to enhance our industrial sector and our educational sector and healthcare sector and in the industrial sector. So I believe we should really focus in research and development. We should focus on the fourth industrial revolution technology like artificial intelligence, 3D printing, and Internet of Things, and so on in the future. And that is, it will come by joint venture with African university and so on. I believe it is the time for Egypt to really start developing a university for Africa, which we call it as African University, which comes from all different countries of Africa to come and be educated in Egypt, which it really depends on research and development. That is very essential right now. And investing that, it's not a short term, it is a long term strategy.
Indeed, Dr. Sayed Khouly, Professor of Economics, Ain Shams University. Always a pleasure, sir, to listen to your precious input. Thank you so much for being with us and our dear viewers. With that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of this edition of Africa Today, where we have been shedding light about the importance of the green energy and the importance of the green bond which was issued by Egypt. Our dear viewers, with that we come to the end of this edition of our program. You were in the company of myself, Maïsi Rabia. Many thanks for watching.